Welcome to Talking Grit, a Detroit Lions podcast. Talking Grit is brought to you by the Monroe County Reporters, Monroe's top news source for police, fire, and community events.
Depot Street, truck voyage request.
Follow them on Facebook, and for $2.99 a month, you can become a subscriber and get the news you crave even faster.
Welcome to Talking Grit. I'm Jason Harwood, and with me is Jacob Litton. We have a special guest today. You know him from his time at MLive and then with the Detroit News. He's been a beat writer for the Lions for the last 12 years. He's Justin Rogers. Justin recently left the Detroit News and bet on himself. He's starting the Detroit Football Network. It's a free and subscriber-based service that I highly recommend. I'm a subscriber myself. So Justin is used to asking the questions, but now it's our turn to ask him the questions. And the only thing that we're missing is a giant Meijer podium. And thank you for joining us, Justin. And how are you doing?
Well, you can't see me either way. So I think, the absence of the Meijer podium is felt in spirit.
Oh, my gosh. So that thing is, I haven't seen it in person yet, but the pictures that you've posted and other people have posted are quite hilarious.
I think my favorite thing was when I brought the measuring tape because I was just curious. And, you do the math really quickly and you're like 66,800 cubic inches. Like it just makes it all the more humorous to me. But, I'm glad that I was kind of being cautious about, using internal terms. I didn't want to throw anybody under the bus for giving anything away, but I was glad one of the PR people walked through the room the other day and called it the name that I've heard a lot of people calling it, and that is the Zamboni. And once you hear it and then see it, like you can't unsee it. Like I just want to go up there and slap a couple headlights on this thing and really bring it home.
Awesome. I wonder who designed that thing, and was Dan Campbell there and they just took his measurements because he's the only one that could touch both sides of the podium comfortably. Yeah,
it definitely was designed with one person in mind. I would love to dig in deeper, but this is not inside information. This is strictly speculative, but I don't think it's long for this world. I really don't, because you're either going to have to come up with a new option, or you're going to have to come up with a step stool, some kind of, I said it'd be cool if you had like the big giant SUV where the step kind of drops down when you open the door. That's what it needs. It needs something to bring up the Khalif Raymonds and the Aaron Glens of the world to not look ridiculous.
Yeah, it's crazy. They didn't test run that, but yeah, it's provided some content for you, at least on Twitter. So
it's probably built by Meijer. They want to put our logo on there really big, so just make a bigger podium.
All right, Jacob, you want to get started with your question?
Yeah, so I like to ask this question to pretty much everybody that comes on. We both answered it in our first episode too, but who was the quarterback when you first became a Lions fan? So when you first started really caring about it and you were really into it, who was the quarterback of that team?
Yeah, so that's a layered question for me, because as a journalist, I'm not a fan per se, but I did grow up in this area, so I would really have to dig back on when I was watching as a kid, and that would have probably been around the very, very late 80s, very early 90s. So it's probably that Rodney Peete, Eric Kramer, Andre Ware carousel was probably the first quarterbacks that I remember watching as a kid. And then, as I transitioned into the job, my first year on the beat was 2011. So it was Matthew Stafford's season at that point. So, Matthew Stafford was all I knew for a really, really long time. It was more about, who was the backup, it's the rotating door at backup. Yeah. So, that was, I would guess, Sean Hill when I popped on.
Yeah, that's funny. Sean Hill is the last really good, competent backup that I remember with Lions. So yeah, that's, not saying that there wasn't any past that, but that's the one that I was when he got put in, I was okay, we can actually still win some games.
Such a good dude too. And I don't know, like you remember quirky things about people. And for some reason, Sean Hill was really into like the vocab word of the day. I don't know if you got some kind of like daily email. And so like you'd walk into the locker room and that was what he wanted to talk about. He wanted to quiz you on the word of the day. So, just these weird quirks that individuals have in the locker room that you never forget.
Yeah, it's got to be nice for you just to kind of get to know them on a personal level a little bit, and then you can include that in some of your writings and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And I'll just say this: you're in that locker room daily, and it's 45 minutes, and you really don't know even if the guys know your name. Even if you've been there for years, like I'm 100% convinced that JMO has no idea what my name is, and that's fine. Like it happens. But then when you do something like I did and you launch this publication and you announce you're leaving, the publication you've been at, you kind of do recognize the guys that know you and the work you did. And I'm sure some of you guys saw the tweets from some of the players, and there's been, several, maybe more than a dozen players and coaches that have kind of come up to me and talked to me about it since then, just kind of casual conversations. And so, you really do over time, kind of resonate in that locker room and do build those relationships. They do.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's cool. I mean, you read your work and everything. You can tell the relationships that you built with everybody. Recently you were taking a bath next to one of the players. Any way to get an interview, right?
Yeah, I mean, it made it sound like there was bubbles involved. And, look, if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. But look, that interview could happen at any time, and I could write a Dan Skipper story, and there are going to be people that read it, and with the quality of the answers he gave me in that setting, it would have been really good. But how do you make it more interesting and get more people talking about it, more people wanting to watch it? So, it's the type of thing that I want to do more of. He's a guy that he hops in the ice bath every day, and there aren't many guys that are in that daily. And so it was just kind of a strike of inspiration. And, I asked him and, cleared it first through him, then he cleared it through PR. And, I kind of wrote this somewhere else. Like there was a symbolism to it to me because it was very, very uncomfortable. But that's kind of what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to make myself uncomfortable, one, with the decision to even start this venture, but also to think outside the box in some way, shape, or form, a little bit more regularly, because you can't just be the same as everybody else, even if you're, you have a price point that you think is more competitive. Like ultimately, you've got to find a way to maximize your value to the readers, and that was really a test run for that, and I'm really happy with the way it turned out. I not only was it goofy and silly and a little bit of self-deprecating humor, it was a really good interview. And so you kind of got all the elements you wanted to go for, and you set a bar for ideas going forward.
It's got to be liberating to have all that open to you, coming from the newspaper when you said, you have to listen to a boss, you have, time constraints and all those things. And now, everything you just answer to yourself and to your audience, right? I mean, is that the way you're feeling?
Yeah. And I will say this, and I've said it elsewhere, I had a really, really good setup at the Detroit News. Like I had almost full autonomy to do what I want and write what I want. In the 7 years I was there, I had 3 assignments. So of the, thousands of articles I wrote what I wanted when I wanted to write it. And you have content expectations in terms of length, because you got to produce a newspaper every day, and you got to, make sure you're serving that audience and serving your bosses in that way. But there is a looseness and a freedom to the way you present the content, right? Like when you're a traditional journalist, and it will forever remain the foundation of what I do, like there's a rigidity to the structure of how your tone is. And so I can, I was able to play with that occasionally at the Detroit News, and, features like the mailbag, you can take a little bit more of a playful, personable tone, but I can do that in anything now. Like I can interject opinion, and the way I see it is it's kind of following a a path that Tom Kowalski blazed, right? And I'm not trying to be Tom Kowalski. I never did, because that's not possible. But you can still borrow elements and pay tribute in that way. And then on top of that, like in terms of an ice bath video, like if I said I was going to do that to my boss, he'd been like, sure, fine, whatever, like that's great. But ultimately, what I've got to produce for the newspaper now is a written version of that story. And I don't have to do that here. I have more flexibility in the way I present the content. And it be more light and humorous and personality driven. I think that's where the freedom comes, not in the decision. I never had any demands or pressures on me to write a specific thing or a specific narrative, but just to give a little bit more of myself to the audience. That's been liberating.
You're definitely achieving that.
Yeah, you are, but along with you giving yourself to your audience and listening to what they have to say, I mean, there's plenty of information in those articles. I mean, those daily, the pressers and scrums that you produce makes you feel like, hey, I was at practice. I understand what the main things that happened at this practice, who stood out. I really appreciate it. And I think anyone that subscribes to the service would really appreciate it because it makes you feel like I saw the training camp practice. Jacob and I were there last Thursday, and I reread the one that you wrote from that day, and I was like, that's pretty accurate of what we saw. And we were there that day, so I got to compare. So it makes me feel like the days I'm not there, I'm still there. It's great.
Yeah, the nice thing about that post, and that's that was just kind of one I thought maybe innovation I wanted to tackle is that the press conferences and kind of the big news gathering interviews with star players or the players that the PR staff and training camp bring to the podium is kind of the bread and butter of what you do on the daily job. And I would be writing 2, 3, 4 stories a day just from those, and then doing other stuff on top of that. And at the Detroit News, I had Nolan, so we were working together to manufacture stuff out of the press conferences, but also manufacture original content that brings value to your readers, to your publication. And I don't have Nolan anymore. I'm doing this on myself, and so that's something I have to replace. And so instead of ignoring kind of the heart of the day, which to me is publicly available information, those are things where DetroitLions.com's cameras are there, recording Campbell every day, recording these player press sessions every day. I wanted to make people aware of what it was going, but just in one spot. And to me, these are philosophical discussions you have with your boss in this subscriber model world. Like, to me, that stuff that's available in group settings should never be something that's a subscriber based story. Like that, anybody can have that. Anybody can go on DetroitLions.com and watch the video. It is already out there. So if everybody's got it, like why should I make that something you've got to pay to read? So that pressers and scrums thing was designed from the beginning to give me something that the people that don't want to pay, and that's there's going to be plenty of them. That's fine. It's probably 80% of my subscribers right now are free. They're every day going to get that recap of the stuff that is publicly available. They don't have to go consume it. They can allow me to process it for them and give them a one-stop shop. And it just seemed like the right thing to do to stay connected to an audience that maybe isn't ready to pull that trigger as a subscriber, but make sure that gets them the heart of the day's news and allows me to go have the freedom to do more of the original content, the one-on-one interviews, to give value to the people that are subscribing, to give them that extra layer of depth to the coverage.
Well, I think you're doing it, and I love it. So just before we transition to some Lions questions, where can the readers go that are listening to this for the first time and say, hey, I'm going to subscribe, I like this? So where would they go, Justin?
Yeah, I picked a URL that I thought was simple and avoided any trademark issues that you can deal with the NFL if you try to throw in their league or team names. So you are able to find me at DetroitFootball.net.
That's simple. All right, DetroitFootball.net.
Simple to the point.
Yep. All right, Justin, are you ready to handle some Lions questions?
Always.
The Lions are heading off for joint practices with the New York Giants before their preseason game this Thursday. What are you looking for in these joint practices? What are you most interested in seeing?
Yeah, it's a really interesting time to be covering the Lions because for the first time, really ever, like the starting lineup, it's not completely set, but there are just so few mysteries about who's starting. It's wide receiver 3 and it's nickel corner. Of course, I'm going to be monitoring those because the starters are the most important players. But what I want to see in these joint practices is you're looking at the young guys a lot of times, both the rookies and the first year to second year players, because those are the guys that are generally making the largest developmental jumps. And so you want to see have what you've been seeing in the practices between teammates. Is that real? Is Terrion Arnold ahead of the curve in terms of a rookie cornerback? Because I genuinely believe that he is performing at a much higher level than Darius Slay was as a rookie. Is Ennis Rakestraw able to continue getting his hands on footballs? Is Jack Campbell taking the step forward that it appears? Is Levi Onwuzurike the real deal? Like, he has been one of the best players at camp. The way I worded it today is if there were training camp awards, he would win both most improved and comeback player of the year and get MVP votes. Like, he has been that good. How does that port over against another team? Because, there is something to be said about learning your teammates' tendencies from seeing them every day, and that giving you an advantage when you know how to utilize those things against them. So when you see somebody fresh that's new, that you don't have those tendencies, that you're falling back more on your fundamentals and your athletic gifts, I want to see, are they translating for those young players?
Definitely. I wanted to see our defense to see what they look like against a different offense, just because we know how good our offense is. And like you said, you're going against the same people every day. The Giants don't particularly have a great offense in the past, but I mean, for our young players to get a shot at a different offense, just be interesting to see if they're actually holding up, if they're performing at the same level.
For sure. And the defensive line in particular, right? They've looked very good. And I know Ben Johnson shouted them out. The run aspect of it is carrying over from a year ago when they were one of the better run defenses in football. They're going to be better this year, and they're going to be even better once DJ Reader gets cleared, because he's one of the better run stuffing defensive tackles in football. But the pass rush has looked better too, and that starts with Aiden Hutchinson, who does look like he's going to take another step forward. He's already very good, but can he go from very good to elite? And I think that is a reasonable expectation in year 3. And I've been really impressed with what I've seen from Davenport so far. It's not a lot of time on the practice field since it's been medically cleared, but you see the power, you see the disruption. Surprisingly, you see a really unique ability to kind of drop and cover some of the running backs coming out of the backfield. And you see what the Lions envisioned when they brought him aboard as that complementary piece to Hutchinson. So you want to see how this line holds up. Is it going to continue to have the impact it's had in the first 2 weeks of training camp against teammates? Will it continue against the Giants? And look, that offensive line, as you kind of alluded to, isn't great. And so, it's a good chance to continue that momentum and build some more confidence within.
All right, so let's stick with this defensive line. So with the DJ Reader injury uncertainty, because we don't know exactly when he's going to come back, how vital is Levi's development to the success of this line? And if Levi does develop into a potential starter, does that cement the 2021 draft class as one of the greatest of all time for the Lions?
Oh, man, we were talking about that the other day. Like, the draft class is it's preposterous top to bottom. It's kind of amusing because I don't know how the roster develops, but even Jamar Jefferson, kind of the black sheep of that group, the forgotten one, because he's a 7th round pick. So who cares if your 7th round picks don't develop? Like, great if they do, but you're not handicapped as a franchise if they don't. But he's looked phenomenal in training camp, and it's really caught me off guard. And you don't know where the path is because of the depth they've built at running back, particularly with the addition of Aki. But Jefferson, has made an early case for consideration for a job. And so, to go back to the defensive line, it really does help to have, Levi stepping up. And look, there's a difference between the style of play with a DJ Reader and a Levi Onwuzurike. One is a stout, two-gap space eater that is run stopping is the priority, and Levi's more of the penetrating, quick first step, slice into the backfield type interior lineman, and it's why they're even experimenting with him a little bit on the edge as a 5 technique. And so there isn't a 1-to-1 replacement per se, but it still gives you more confidence in the depth of your rotation while you're waiting for that to develop. I'm a little bit more interested in Broderick Martin's ability to serve as a stopgap, because he is that skill set replacement as a more of a run stuffing nose tackle. I would imagine that there's going to be a little bit more, or they hope that they could put a little bit more on Broderick Martin's plate to start this season, to cover those first 1, 2, 3, 4 games that Reader's out. But you do have the ability to kind of, even though you've moved McNeil and you have him in that 3 tech now, you can shift him back and have him play a little bit more of a run stopper in these early weeks to get you across that bridge.
It looked like they had Kyle, I don't know if it's Pico or Pecco, like with the practice we saw, he was out there with the ones also trying to kind of fill that role.
100%. Nope, you're on to something there. And it's a veteran that's played a lot of football. The almost a definition of a stopgap, right? A guy that is experienced, that signed a 1-year deal that's minimum or not much more than minimum. And not only that, he has playing time experience with the position coach, Terrell Williams. So, there's familiarity, which breeds comfort. I think there's an increasingly good chance that, that's a guy that maybe you didn't think much of when they signed. It just felt like it might be another body, but he can serve as that bridge. And, if he shows out as productive there in the first 4 games and fulfilling his assignments, there's a chance a guy like that sticks and makes a difference.
We're going to move over to some wide receiver talk here. Wide receiver 3 is obviously a hot button topic. You mentioned it earlier. That's one of the few starting jobs that maybe is up for grabs. So we know that Darius Fountain has been getting a lot of reps with the ones. I just want to know, in your opinion, is this a case of the Lions seeing what they have in him because they already know what they have with DPJ? Or are they really, is Darius Fountain the front runner for that wide receiver 3 position right now?
No, it's a really good question, and shows you're thinking at a different level about how maybe practice reps work. But I do think they like what they have, and they want to see more of it, right? Because now it's a sample size question. We saw it in practice last year. We thought it was pretty good. Let's go see what it looks like in a full off season where he's been in the system. All right, we like it so far. Let's give him some reps with the ones. And with those opportunities, outside of one bad practice, and it was a bad practice, he did not, shy away from that. He seems like a pretty self-aware individual, but outside of that one day with a couple drops, like Fountain is a guy that you notice every single day doing something, and it's different things, which I think is good, that you're not a one-trick pony, if you will, because that's a phrase that's been used in this training camp about other players. He's making contested catches in short areas. He's absolutely, I think, the best high point receiver, and the ability to go up and make a catch over a defender at the highest point of his leaping ability, which, by the way, he posted a 42.5-inch vertical leap coming out of college. He was a state record holder in the 110-meter hurdles coming out of high school. Like, the guy has springs for knees. And then you also see, at least at some level, some deep ball ability and some special teams acumen. So, I had really thought that Khalif Raymond was going to be, the guy, just because of his, his familiarity with the coaching staff, the trust Jared Goff has in him. But, when Ben Johnson threw in that little tiny line at the end of what they were looking for the receiver, it was, consistency and intelligence. And you're like, yep, check, Khalif. And then he said, but if we were being picky or greedy or whatever the term was he used, you'd really like some length at that spot. It's like, oh, yeah. And so I think we all assumed that it was going to be DPJ when Reynolds left, and the Lions went out and acquired Peoples-Jones with intent, with purpose last year. He didn't do a lot in terms of how reps, just because he get dropped in the middle of the season. But when he did do something, it was eye-catching. And so you just thought with a year, like, he was going to be the guy. But Fountain has without question stood out over him. And there's plenty of time, and preseason games and joint practices have a way of flipping trajectories really, really quickly. But if I was to pick today who that number 3 receiver would be, or at least the largest piece of the pie, because look, Raymond is going to see plenty of playing time. I would say it's going to be Fountain. Talk to me in a week, and we'll see if I'm still there.
I think the preseason games are going to be huge for him.
No doubt.
That's what I was about to say. Going these practices, seeing what he's going to look like in the preseason. All right, I'm going to stick with the wide receivers. JMO has been getting rave reviews from everyone that's witnessed him at practice. Like, for you, what part of his game has expanded the most, or why the sudden switch? Why are we all raving over JMO?
I'd like to say that I'm kind of proud of the fact that I have not written a JMO story yet. Like, it's really, really easy to do, because he is an absolute fan favorite. And on top of that, there's a natural curiosity, because his speed is just something that is so rare, and so people are so hyped. And I've been kind of picking away at that, trying to get away from the press conference quotes and talk to people one-on-one and kind of get more perception. But the very first thing that jumped out at the start of this offseason was the deep ball tracking. You knew he had the speed to get past defenders, but if you've watched him the last 2 years, like, there's this inconsistency in his ability to get to the football. And I've said this for a while, like, I feel like when the ball is on the inside, when he's coming from the outside to the middle of the field, like, his tracking is fine. It's good from there. But when it's over his outside shoulder, when he's tracking those sideline balls, like, it just was, I mean, simply put, it wasn't good. It wasn't good enough. And you've seen this pretty significant step in his ability to track those balls this year. And I've been kind of picking away and trying to get different perspectives of why people think it did. And I finally was able to pull JMO aside after his session the other day and get his input. So I'll get around to that eventually. A little bit more of an in-depth thing there, but it's not just the deep ball. It really is, like, you hate when you ask a player, what are you working on? And they say everything, because it's not a cop-out. It's always true, but it's kind of boring and cliche. You'd like them to really hone in on something specific to make the story interesting to readers. But it really is true with Jameson. Like, you see a guy that is improving in every little thing. He dropped a pass the other day. It was the first one I saw him drop, which is such a contrast to last year, when it might have been, for that stretch of when he came back from suspension at the end of the year, the worst hands I've ever seen on a receiver in a Detroit Lions practice in my 12 years covering the beat. Like, it was almost like he had the yips, and he's cured that. He's running a little bit more of a reliable route tree for the quarterback. It's not that he couldn't run the routes before, but Jared Goff is trusting him, both because of the hands and the timing and placement of where he is in the timing and structure of those plays. And so it's all the little things that he's doing right. And I think the one thing that's going to be key for him to really, really explode as a playmaker is he just has to slow down. And I know that seems counterintuitive, but I compared him recently to this. It's a personal anecdote, but I was hanging out with a friend, and I was going to his house, and I got there before he did. And he texted me. He's like, "Hey, can you let the dog out?" Sure. It was a new dog, and he adopted from shelter. And I got in, and the dog was in a kennel, a crate. And like as soon as I walked to the door, that crate was just rocking. I mean, the dog was so excited, wagging his tail, banging against the sides, and you open the door, and the dog just comes running out full speed, running in circles, running back and forth, and had to go to the bathroom. And I didn't open the screen door, and the dog ran right through the screen door. And I think that's kind of how I think about Jameson Williams, and the fact that his speed is so crazy that he sometimes gets going so fast that his brain is not able to keep up with his body. And it's, I think it's something that very few of us can, appreciate or understand. And so there are times where even if you go 85% of the speed as Jameson Williams, you're faster than anybody else. And if you take just that little bit off the gas, it allows you to concentrate a little bit more on making sure you secure the catch, to really process how you're going to break down the defender that's in your way in the open field to make that man miss. And I think that is going to be the thing that if he can get it down, and he's made progress already, I'll say that he's made progress between last year to this year. If he can refine it even more, like that'll be the thing that takes him from a good number 2 to a really, really legitimate game in and game out threat to do damage.
That's really interesting. One thing I equate that you talk about the speed. Jahmyr Gibbs seemed like at the beginning of last year's rookie year had that too, where he was kind of running out of his shoes. He'd sometimes just miss a cut or something like that, but it seemed to slow down for him in the second half, and that's when you really seen him take off. So do you see a similar type thing with JMO as far as like maybe just being more intentional with your speed?
Yeah, I like I said, I've seen a little bits of it, but I think you want to see that be like an area of continued development. It's tough. How do you tell a guy that's always been faster than everybody to just pump the brakes just a little bit? And that, probably comes more naturally to a running back, to work on your vision and your patience. It's hammered home so much more at that position to wait for your blocks to develop. And it's a little bit different for a receiver because they're operating in space. But even the drop that Williams had the other day, like I said, he's had one that I can recall in camp, but it was a short pass over the middle. He sat down in his zone, did exactly what he was supposed to do. The ball arrived chest high, and it was the epitome of a concentration drop. He was already thinking about turning upfield and what he was going to do to the defender that was going to be the first one to arrive to him. And you can't forget the most important thing, which is catching the football. And again, he's made progress. There's no question that he isn't doing that as often. It's all about, from now, the incremental improvements to do it less and less and less. You hear it all the time. Consistency is the name of the game. So as long as you're making those small strides, that's all you can ask from a young receiver like that.
All right, that's interesting. And also just the development to a fan favorite. I think people liked him before, but the crowd is just going crazy each practice. So that's awesome to see.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, he's very much like a big kid. He likes to have fun. He is a trash talker. You're always going to be enamored as a fan with speed. And so he's just, generally speaking, likable and interesting. And so it's not surprising at all to me to see fans in it. And he even though he's had kind of this rough patch to start his career, like it's never developed into something toxic between him and his fans. You look at maybe the difference between how he's handled it and never made it personal versus, maybe somebody like Eric Ebron, right? Where, when he had those struggles, he got combative in the social media sphere, and it slowly caused fans to turn on him. Like, there's a lot of similar personality traits and hype and potential with where Ebron and JMO are coming from as young players, but I guess maybe the way that they handled it. And look, I can't say that I wouldn't have handled it Ebron's way either. Like, I think we all, are have a weakness to criticism, especially when we're younger and not mature. But it really does seem to just run off the back of Jameson Williams. It doesn't seem to affect him at all, and I think it just makes it even a little bit more endearing.
One last question here before we let you go, Justin. And when you're in the training camp, and in your opinion, what are the depth issues with the current roster? And we know it's a deep roster, but if you had to pick a position or two, where do you think the depth could be improved?
Kicker. I mean, like everybody wants Jake Bates to be a thing, and honestly, like anybody who walks in that door, I'd like them to be a thing. This is their livelihood. If you're getting a chance, like, you want to see a guy on an individual, personal level, as a human level, succeed. But he is really battling some struggles right now, and I commend the Lions, as I do with almost all their personnel decisions, to giving him a leash and some breathing room to figure it out. I think it's a big part of their cultural identity to be loyal and give a player time. But I think that given the urgency and the importance of the kicking position, at the very least, they really need to add competition to that room. They can't continue on, I don't think, with just Bates as their only kicker. There isn't enough of a track record, one UFL season as a field goal kicker, to just put, unquestioned belief that he's going to work it out. And so if you believe competition brings out the best of everybody, then, bring somebody else in that you believe could, also be the guy for you. Bring him in and let them duke it out. And so I think that's first and foremost, position that, you'd like to see the Lions address. And then, there's still, as I would say, probably with every single team in the NFL, some concerns about the backup offensive line. The Lions have had some injuries there, and I think Moody was a lot of people expected to be a piece this year. But that was a guy I really liked coming out of the draft, and he's just had injury issues. Well, suffered another one, out for the year. Coyote is down right now. I'm not really sure the extent of that. It's probably something we need to ask Campbell. And Christian Mahogany is dealing with this mystery illness that is serious enough that it's kept him on NFI for 2 weeks. And the way Campbell talked about it made it sound like there's not this impression that he's going to be back soon. So you're a little concerned about depth at guard behind the two starters. Offensive tackle, Dan Skipper, I think we know who he is. He can get by in a pinch. He's got plenty of experience. Colby Sorsdal is a guy they really want to be a thing, understandably, but there's a rawness there jumping from William and Mary a year ago. So your starting lineup of the offensive line is as good as any in the NFL, but we know very well that the last 3 years there's been something that's popped up every single year, and by something I mean multiple somethings. It's just been a string of unfortunate things that has kept that five from being on the field together. So you need guys that can step in. You need reliability, and I think it would be encouraging if you could see some of those guys take a step forward here in the 3 preseason games.
All right, Justin, I want to thank you for your time. You've been very gracious to jump on our show. Your answers are insightful, to say the least, and enjoyable to listen to. For those listening that may have not subscribed to Justin's Detroit Football Network service, this is what you get. You get thoughtful answers that are above just cut and dry, cut and paste answers. And he takes a unique angle on all his articles that make you feel like you get to know the player a little bit better, or get to learn something about how the Lions view a player. And it just, I can't recommend it highly enough. I'm a subscriber myself. Read all the articles. First article I'll read from a Detroit writer. So, Justin, thank you so much. Again, it's DetroitFootball.net, correct?
Correct.
All right. Just go there. I implore you to subscribe. Any last words, Justin?
I will say that you have undersold yourself as a subscriber. I think you are the subscriber. I did have a good chuckle when I just put it out there that I had crossed 100,000 page views or whatever in the first 6 days, and you quickly chimed in and said, "Jokes on you." I'm paraphrasing, are pretty close. "Jokes on you." I'm 99,000 of those, and I laughed because you have been genuinely one of the I guess most supportive or most loyal, and it's honestly it's a reason why I didn't hesitate to hop on with you today. It's sometimes hard to find time for all the different interviews requests that come your way. Blessed to have a 9-hour drive to knock some of these out today, but I don't say yes to everybody because it's just not possible. And so, I want to flip that appreciation onto you a little bit, and in the greater sense, the appreciation to everybody. It has been the support has been validating, humbling, overwhelming. I am, having some out the gate success that I could not have imagined to the degree that I am, and just gives me even more confidence that I did the right thing, and even more drive to continue to provide what I'm providing, but also to provide more than what I'm providing. And maybe that's not quantity, but it's quality and creativity. Like I'm just so incredibly motivated right now to do what I'm doing, and it's because of the support that I'm getting.
I'm enjoying being part of your network and just talking with people that know football, because we're all in the same vein. I think a lot of your subscribers are well informed and just want to be more informed. And one thing that I just before I leave, I would be amiss to say, Dave Phipp called you out in the press conference, and to me that was amazing. That was just amazing amount of respect. And do you want to speak on that at all? Because to me that was it was awesome that someone of that stature called you out and just praised you for your decision.
Yeah, I mean, I think it speaks to two things. One, kind of some of what we talked about earlier with, the conversations that happen more in private. I've been really surprised and knocked back by how many players even noticed, including, many of the top players on the roster. Like you would think with the things going on in their lives, I'm not going to name names, but maybe they have a Netflix show or got married, things like that, like that they would take notice of what's going on in my life. That just, it, I don't know. It's just, it's humbling. It's weird. And I don't know how else to explain it. And, it also speaks to who Phipp is. He's always been a guy that walking off the field has, since I sat down and did a pretty lengthy interview with him about his relationship with his father, his first year here, which was, a fairly emotional interview and a ability to connect on a personal level. He's always kind of taken interest in my life beyond the job. And I think we share kind of this curiosity about life. He's a Renaissance man with doing weird things like beekeeping and home brewing. And I'm kind of the same way. Like I like to just do weird things that I don't know what I'm doing. But I like to test my limits. So we've kind of bonded on that. And so when he found out I was doing this, he was excited. And, for him to use his platform in that way to share that excitement, I had no idea. It was very unexpected. It was really cool. And I guess it speaks to the man he is, to want to do something like that for me. Because he knows that when special teams has a bad play, I'm going to come and I'm going to ask the question on why. And I'm going to be the same reporter I always am. And there's going to be the accountability that goes into the job that it can't be bought with kind words. Like I'm going to do my job. but the respect that exists there because of the way I've done it the right way, and built the personal relationship around that. Just it's confirmation that coach has been
you couldn't have said
the
it
right
any
one.
better. That's what I was going to say. Just if you treat people with respect and, you're doing your job, they get that. And I think people take notice. The players obviously take notice because they're, seeing what's going on in your personal life. So I think that speaks to your writing, the way you treat the job. So again, subscribe to the service. You're going to get all this. It's a unique view. And, we all have, a lot of the writers, they all have access to the same content. It's just a matter of the writing and putting you in that place and just making you understand the whole picture as opposed to just what you're seeing. So again, subscribe to a service, do yourself a favor.
Right, for sure. It's way more than just what you see, the highlights out of, you see the quotes and everything for training camp, but the insight and everything he provides, definitely just awesome. Awesome material.
Yep. So I think we're going to get out of here. Justin's probably got some other, he wants to listen to his tunes in his car on his way to New Jersey. So thank you, Justin, for showing up, providing awesome content for us. I appreciate it. And for Jacob, let's go Lions.